Would be wonderful. Thank you very much. And let's get started. And we're going to talk about the sequence that we're going to be following in today's presentation. There's going to be basically 6 stages or steps, if you will. The first stage, we're going to be talking about the importance of accurately targeting best fit candidates with your outreach campaigns that you're sending out through Loxo. At the second stage, we'll talk about the importance of carefully crafting the pitch for the job that you're working in terms of, engaging the candidate and getting them interested in that particular job or project that you're working on. At stage 3, we'll talk about the importance of using an omni-channel engagement plan to maximize the chance that the person will respond to the outreach campaign and get in touch with you. Then at stage 4, we'll turn things over to Jeff Moore, our guest today, and he will walk us through some of the best practices that he has outlined and been able to identify that has worked well with him and his team as he's been using Loxo and the outreach campaign tool. Then at stage 5, I'll take things over and I will walk you through some scary good sequences with Loxo outreach. We'll jump into the Loxo user interface and I'll walk you through the step-by-step process of either using a Loxo outreach template and personalizing that to send out, or to create one from scratch. And then at stage 6, I'll also touch on the importance of building talent pools in Loxo. These are lists of candidates, essentially, that you have set ahead of time so that when the job comes down the pipe, you're able to immediately grab those folks, so to speak, and drop them into an outreach campaign to sort of accelerate and automate that process. All right, so let's begin and let's talk first about the importance of accurately targeting a group of best fit candidates for your outreach campaign. So you want to think carefully before you put together your campaign in terms of who exactly is the target audience. Now, I would say in general, when people are making outreach campaigns, especially in Loxo, they are going to be able to create campaigns that are primarily aimed at candidates, groups of folks that you want to interest in a particular job or project. But you can also create outreach campaigns that are aimed at contacts, people that are over at, let's say, prospect companies that you want to engage with and tell them about your services and get them interested in using your services. So that said, you want to think carefully about who exactly is this outreach campaign going to, and who are these folks? Are they candidates for the particular job, contacts? Maybe there are other types of folks that you're trying to do outreach for. Think in terms of, if they're candidates, what skills should they have for this position? What exactly are you looking for? What is the hiring manager or the client that you're working with looking for in terms of the skill set that is possessed by the candidate? Next, you want to think carefully about, for ideal best fit candidates for the campaign you're putting together, what education level should they have, and what kind of work experience and work highlights should they have in their background to make them a good fit for the client. And finally, you want to think carefully as well, of course, these days, about soft skills and culture fit in relation to the client company and the hiring manager. So basically, you want to think carefully about the type of candidate in terms of things like personality temperament. Are you looking for a rah-rah cheerleader, kind of an extroverted person? Or is the client looking for someone that can work remotely without supervision, kind of an introverted person? These kinds of subtle details in the candidate background or makeup will sort of determine who is the ideal best fit candidate and therefore the best fit target for this outreach campaign that you're putting together. So you might want to sketch out ahead of time the full holistic view of the ideal candidate or pool of candidates that you're looking for with this campaign. All right, next, stage 2. Let's talk now about crafting the pitch for the job. If you had to give an elevator pitch to the candidate, a quick summation of the job, what would be the things that you want to highlight for the candidate to engage them and get them interested in applying for that job? So first of all, you want to think about what is great about the company. Successfully recruiting the best fit candidates these days, a lot of times involves not only marketing the job, but marketing the company itself and getting the candidates interested in working for that particular company. So you want to do your due diligence and research the background on the hiring company and find out what exactly are the selling points for that company and reinforce those selling points to the candidates so that you get them interested in working for that company and not just thinking about the details of the job. But as you can see, number two in this process of pitching or crafting a pitch for the job is to think carefully about then what is great about this job particularly. So you're marketing the company, but you're also marketing the job. So you want to think about what about this job is going to be attractive to the candidate pool and not just the salary. I think for a lot of folks, that's pretty much what they key on, right? The pay rate. But you want to focus on the intangible things about the job that are going to be very attractive to the candidates and focus on developing a list of sort of like selling points for the job itself. You also want to think about, from a psychology perspective, why should they think about leaving their current job? So you want to get the candidates sort of thinking when you're putting the pitch together about compare this job with your current job and see the difference. So you want to sort of frame the issue in terms of why they should be considering perhaps making a jump to this new job. Then you want to sort of focus on why exactly are these candidates an excellent fit for the job in question. So you want to highlight what about their background particularly interested you in them as a candidate. So they get a sense of what exactly is it about them that is intriguing to you and or the hiring manager in this process. And finally, overall, when you're crafting, sort of the pitch for the job that you're going to be presenting to the candidates as part of your outreach campaign, keep it simple, keep it concise and short, but detailed, right? You don't want to be vague when you're trying to convey the value of this job to the candidate pool. You want to be as detailed as possible, but at the same time, keep it simple and concise and easy to follow. All right, stage 3. You want to use an omni-channel engagement plan when you're thinking about outreach campaigns. Now, what does that mean? A lot of people don't know what omni-channel engagement even means. Omni-channel just simply means using the most channels, modes of communication that you possibly can to reach and contact and ultimately engage with the target audience. Okay, so with that in mind, a couple of key data points here. First of all, we know from several different studies now that around 85% of recruiters rely exclusively on email as their main mode of communication. And the average working professional, we all know this part, gets more than 121 emails in their inbox every single day. Now that particular stat came from Lever, but if you read the data out in the recruiting media, you'll see that this has been replicated in study after study, survey after survey. It's a fact. Recruiters, they lean on email very heavily. And there's nothing wrong with that. You'll see when I show you how to make an outreach campaign that really kicks butt about how email is an important component in that. But you want to sort of broaden your outreach campaign engagement modes and include things like LinkedIn, outbound phone calls, text messaging, and even more esoteric ones. So a combination of phone calls, text messages, emails, and LinkedIn in-mails to get their attention makes a lot of sense. It maximizes the odds that you're going to get a response from the candidate. And when it comes to texting, that is really increasingly being seen as the key to this, right? Why? Because first of all, texts have a 98% open rate. It optimizes the effectiveness, or you can optimize the effectiveness of this process of using text messaging in your outreach campaigns with automation, like we offer in Loxo with our outreach campaigns that integrate text messages, personalization, so that the text messages are personalized, like we offer in Loxo, where you can drop in a first name merge tag. So when they get the text message in a bulk text message, for example, it says, "Hey, Dan, I got this great job. I want to tell you about," that kind of thing. And by following the TCPA best practices. Now, some people don't know what the TCPA is, so let's review that. The TCPA is the 1991 Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and it governs text messages. So there are basically two fundamental tenets in the TCPA best practices. First of all, always state your name and your company when you're sending a text message so that they know who is communicating with them by text message, and always offer them an opt-out process so that they are aware that they can opt out of these text messages. So if you follow those two basic principles or best practices of TCPA, you should be golden when it comes to using text messaging as part of your outreach campaigns. Now, just a couple more statistics on the benefits of texting in relation to or in comparison with, let's say, emailing. 86% of candidates feel positively when text messages are used in the hiring process. That comes from Yellow. And 90% prefer text messages over other forms of communication, such as emails and phone calls. That comes from Twilio. Less than 5% of people opt out of text messages, and 96% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. That comes from Forbes. All of this speaks to the importance of integrating text messaging as part of your outreach campaign omni-channel engagement plan. You want it to be a mix of text messages, outbound emails, LinkedIn actions, and other kinds of ways that you can engage with the candidates or the contacts. Okay, next, I'm going to turn things over to our special guest, Jeff Moore. He is an executive recruiter and search consultant over at Gilman Partners. Now, Gilman Partners is based in Cincinnati, and they are a retained executive search, talent acquisition, and leadership development firm with 19 full-time employees, including a 4-person research and sourcing team. Gilman Partners places more than 100 professionals each year and specializes in the areas of manufacturing, finance and accounting, nonprofit leadership, sales and marketing, human resources, construction, real estate, and more. And Jeff, I want to welcome you again and thank you for carving out the time to comment on some of the things that have worked well for you and your team with regard to using Loxo Outreach Campaigns tool. So Jeff, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can, Dan. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, so if I kick off in the beginning, we have organizing our candidate target list. Well, first of all, let me first say again, thank you very much for having us and having me here. Loxo has been kind of a game changer for us as well. I think what we find best about it is the flexibility. We might be using it a little different than others might, or maybe how it was originally intended, but it's working really well for us at this point. So that's one of the things that we really enjoy about it the best. So we jump into this with organizing our candidate target list. And for us, that basically starts in LinkedIn. We still reach out or source most of our passive candidates through LinkedIn. And then we'll bring them into Loxo via import. And once they get into Loxo, and this is where we might be doing it a little bit differently than others, we place them into a pipeline that's located within the job. And so we have a customized pipeline that, we have first place they come into when you import somebody, they automatically fall into this prospects pipeline. We move them into a pending campaign pipeline, and depending on the situation and the job, they might sit there for a day, they might sit there for longer, or they might sit there for a few minutes before we actually move them into an active campaign. And then from there, on responses, then we move them out of that pipeline and then to a third pipeline, which we call candidates in process. So that's kind of how we're moving them through, getting them from LinkedIn, getting them in and targeting the ones we want, organizing them, getting them into a campaign, and then of course moving them out as they respond. So we timing of the campaigns is something that we've we still think a lot about, and it depends a lot on the kinds of the searches that we're doing. Typically, we do not like to send emails first thing in the morning. And we don't like to do it at the end of the day. So we kind of have a window that we try to, 9 to 3 maybe might be the window that we send most of our messages out. We find that Monday morning is not the most effective time to send them out, the same as Friday afternoon. So we've kind of, figured out that I don't know if there's a perfect day in the week, but it seems to be somewhere sandwiched in between that. We do typically only do office hours. I know that's an option when you set up a campaign. We typically always click that. But we have had searches, specifically in the construction world, where if any of you have worked in that world, that you understand that their hours are a little different. There are a lot of the times, especially if you're looking for a project manager or superintendent of something like that, they're in the field. So you've got to catch them at odd hours. So you've got to catch them early AM. You got to catch them, later in the evening, maybe when they're coming off the shift, or like I said, early AM before that safety meeting in the morning. So we do for certain jobs. Sometimes we unclick that and let our campaigns run just 24/7. So we love the new scheduling tool. We think that addition has been awesome to be able to sort of, to put people into a campaign and then set the date and the time we want it to go out. So that's allowing us to obviously set a lot of things up on a Friday. Say, I want this to go out Monday at 9 a.m. or, something like that. So we can set that up beforehand. That's been really awesome, to be truthful. So as far as the types of campaigns that we typically run, we most of the time run short campaigns. And by that, I'm meaning, they might get done in a week or maybe over a 3-week period. And they involve, as Dan alluded to, omni-channel. We do email, we do text, we might go back to an email, back to a text, and we might change that up too. We might start with a text and then go to an email. But that's something typically we most of the time have a 3-stage short-term campaign, but we do run longer campaigns as well. We do searches, for candidates, like maybe looking for consultants or accountants, and those are kind of an ongoing thing. And so we might have campaigns that have 6 stages or 7 stages that might run over 6, 7, 8 months, just kind of always keeping that contact, we space those messages out, obviously, but just to sort of, since we do so much work in those worlds, we just always like to keep in contact. And we also use extended campaigns for people that just when we want to check in with. Sometimes we have contractors, on-call contractors that we have clients that are interested in, and so we kind of always want to keep in touch with those folks as well. So we sometimes set up extended campaigns that might have a month between messages or something, just so we can stay in contact with those folks. And as far as the messaging itself, we start, like I said, we start in LinkedIn. So we start with an in-mail. And we'll get those sent out first, and then we import them into our process. The message itself is sometimes very similar to the in-mail message we send out. We do tweak it a little bit as we bring it over. Of course, sometimes we add the job description, attach it, or we've also embedded it as a link. We also like to put our Calendly links in our messages. Our emails go out. We've actually found attaching a Calendly link to a text message can be effective as well. So we've been doing that. And that's, again, the whole texting and the campaign thing has been a real game changer for us. The ability to be able to reach out directly like that. And as Dan alluded to, that is where we're getting most of our responses, is certainly through the text portion of our campaign. So we've now started to think maybe we start with that, then go to an email, or, have multiple texts in our sequences. So, that's, again, it's been a real game changer for us. So.
Well, Jeff, that was very helpful to give us that insight. I know that you sent over a screenshot as well, which I think I have pasted in here. Can you speak a little bit about,
Sure.
It looks like this is a screen share of a campaign that you put together. Is this a typical one or a one-off? What are we looking at
This
here?
would be a very typical short-term campaign for us. We would start with an email message, and like I said, usually that will contain some sort of job description or link to it. Then we move to a text. And we like to space those out a couple of days between the first message and the text. And then we space out a couple more days, maybe even 4 or 5 days, maybe in a week, to get that last email. And when it's a shorter campaign like this, the first email we send out sometimes mirrors the last email, but usually on that last email message that we sent out, we like to put in something like, yeah, hey, I know we might have, tried to reach out to you before, just wanted to try you one more time, or hey, we're interviewing for this now, and we really want to see if you're interested, so I want to try you again, that kind of a thing. So the last email always has, usually has a little something extra to it.
Excellent. And Jeff, how do the candidates respond to the campaigns? Are they typically responding by email or to the text you said?
Most of the time, most of our responses are coming through text. We certainly get responses through email, but the majority of our responses are certainly coming through text.
Okay. And have you seen a lot of these candidates wind up applying for the jobs? Are they getting engaged and actually, sort of following through and applying for the jobs?
Yeah, we work a little different. So if somebody is going to contact us, the message we are sending out, we're sending the job to them. We're
Mm,
reaching out to a passive group and we're saying, hey, are you interested in this opportunity? If you are, let's talk. So when they respond to us, we know the interest is there. And unless of course they respond with a, not interested, or I might share this with my network or those kinds of things. But yeah, if they're responding to us with a positive message, we know that they are interested and want to engage about the search.
excellent. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time out and giving us your insight as a real world user of Loxo. So thanks very much to giving us your commentary here.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So next, we're going to talk about the process of actually building out these outreach campaign sequences in Loxo. And this is where I put on my training hat. And we're not going to do a full-blown training here. It's going to be a high-level view. But basically, I'm going to show you how to step-by-step put together an effective campaign sequence in Loxo. Then we'll talk about how to manage the recipients of the campaign. If someone needs to be removed from the campaign, if you drop them in by mistake, let's say, or you need to move someone from stage 2 to stage 3, this kind of thing. I'll show you sort of the recipient management tools that we give you to sort of manage all the folks that are receiving the campaigns. And then we'll talk about how when you're in the campaigns tool in Loxo, you can easily track the results of the campaigns to get a sense of which ones are the smash hit campaigns and which ones are kind of the duds that aren't doing so well kind of thing. And then after that, I'm going to segue into the idea of building talent pools in Loxo. Now, a talent pool is basically a group of candidates, right? A list of candidates. And in Loxo, we have a fabulous lists tool where you can easily put together lists of candidates by any sort of segmentation you like and have those folks available to drop into outreach campaigns quickly. So I'm going to show you how to organize talent pools of great candidates ahead of time to help you stay nimble and hit the ground running on new projects, and using the list tool in Loxo to do that, to organize your talent pools and streamline your workflow. So let me shrink down my screen here and I'm going to jump into Loxo, and we're going to start by creating a campaign. Now, when you're logged in on your Loxo account, as many of you know already, on the left side, there is a navigation bar where you can easily get to the main tools in the platform, like jobs, people, tasks, companies, deals. And by using the More button here, you can access Loxo Outreach, which we're going to talk about, Loxo Source, and our reporting module. So when I click on Loxo Outreach, it immediately takes you over to the dashboard view in Loxo, and it will show you a display of all of the outreach campaigns that you have created previously that are just kind of running in the background, sending out communications to candidates or contacts on your sequence. And, as you drop new people into these campaigns going forward, it triggers all the new people at stage 1, of course, and keeps everybody straight. Now, to get a campaign started, you simply use the blue add button up here at the upper right. And thankfully, we have some templates here that we've built for you. If you're having writer's block or you're in a hurry and you don't have time to build a campaign from scratch, our a really excellent support team here at Loxo has carved out a couple of templates that you can use when you're in a pinch. So let's take a look at that. If I click on Browse Templates, you'll find that we have 4 prefab campaigns that we built for you. 2 of those are related to business development outreach. So this would be, like I talked about earlier, you might have campaigns that go out to candidates, of course, to talk to them about jobs, but you might want to have outreach campaigns that go out to contacts that you've made or identified over at prospect companies that you're looking to get over the line and become a paid client of yours. So we have a couple. One would be a business development outreach campaign sequence that would be for groups of new hiring managers that you've been able to identify, to communicate with them and just say, hey, I just want to say hi. The other one is a business development outreach campaign that's more traditional. It's an email, task, and a phone call sequence for, a group of contacts over at a prospect company. Let's look at the one for new hiring managers. People usually find this one very interesting. So if I choose Use Template, it's going to open up this campaign sequence that's already been put together for me to use. So here it's just called business development outreach, new hiring manager at company. And this is going to be a simple email and a phone call sequence. So you can see the stages of the campaign here on the left. Stage 1 in this sequence is a scheduled email with a 1-hour delay on it, basically just saying something like, hey, congratulations on your new job as hiring manager at such and such a company. Now I can take a look at that very easily by just using the 3 dot, the more button here, and choosing edit. And this is really touches on a key sort of concept when you're building great outreach campaigns and you're using a template. You want to make sure that you personalize and customize all of the communications in this template sequence so that it doesn't look generic. It doesn't look like it's a template, right? So for each of the stages in this template that we've built for you, I encourage you to use the edit button next to each of these stages to edit the content, just to make sure it flows naturally, right? So in this case, I opened up the first stage email. And one cool concept whenever you're sending out campaigns through Loxo is you can always, at the from line for the emails in the sequence, have those go out via Loxo, which means that these emails in this sequence are going to go out through our servers, which means that you won't get flagged as being a spammer in this process. Just another best practice when it comes to creating outreach campaigns. At the from line, always choose from this drop-down menu here the option at the bottom via Loxo. Now, at the subject line, of course, you want to carefully craft a subject line that's going to entice the recipient to open up and read this email. Now, here's a pretty generic, pretty drab subject line, if I can say so myself, right? Congratulations on the new job. That's pretty drab, right? So one thing you can do is down below, you can see this first name merge tag. Whenever you're creating an email in Loxo, you can drop in person merge tags like a first name merge tag. And that's really another best practice. Whenever you're sending a bulk email or a campaign email, you want to get in the habit of dropping in a first name merge tag in the actual body of the communication. So here it would say, hi, Dan, first and foremost, I want to congratulate you, etc. Right? But the key concept is after you drop in a first name merge tag down below here in the content of the email, you can basically copy and paste that merge tag, which I'll do here, and copy it into the subject line. Okay, so here I can say congratulations, and then I'll paste in the first name merge tag right there. So now it's going to say, congratulations, Dan, on the new job. And there are studies that show that if you mention their first name in the subject line, the open rate goes up by like 30%. So it makes sense to drop in the first name merge tag after you've dropped it in down below here. Just copy and paste it into the subject line, and that will give a little kick to the open rate on this email as it goes out. But I think more generally, there's a lot of stuff online that you can read about strategies for, crafting successful subject lines to get them, mentioning the company name or the job name or the details about the job in the subject line. There's some things that you can do to, again, sort of engage them to open up this email. Now down below, you're going to want to as well look at the content that we've provided for you, this kind of prefab content, and personalize it. Make changes to this so that it reflects your style of writing, your style of communication, and more importantly, the details of the messaging that you want in here. So you're going to want to go through, these couple of paragraphs that we've come up with you, which are generic, right? I mean, they're effective. You could just use them the way they are and you probably get a good response rate. But you want to go line by line here and review what we've written and essentially, edit it so it matches your messaging, right? Okay, now notice as well that you can use the add attachment button to add attachments onto this email if you want. And down below here at the lower left is where you can set the delay time on this communication. Now the delay time here is set for 1 hour, and you can always set the delay times in minutes, hours, days, or weeks. And weeks is how you can set up those really gentle drip campaigns that go out like once every 8 weeks to passive candidates to sort of keep in touch with those folks. But best practice we always recommend on the first communication in the sequence for a campaign is to set at least a 1 or even a 2-hour delay. Why? Why is that important? Well, primarily if your finger slips, right? If you drop someone into the campaign and it's set at 0 delay hours, that communication is going to go out immediately when you drop them in. If you have a 1-hour delay built in to this 1 hour, into this first email in this sequence, then you have an hour to go into the campaign to kind of yank out that recipient, remove them before that first communication goes out to them. So again, build a 1 or 2 hour delay into that first stage communication. To the right here, you can always send yourself a test email. when you're creating an email for an outreach campaign sequence. And I recommend you do that. Click on this button, look in your inbox, and just make sure the formatting for this email looks perfect before you blast it out to dozens or hundreds of people at a crack, right? Makes sense. Now, to the right of that, you'll see a little box here where you can put a check mark to include your email signature at the bottom of this content in this email. And that makes sense, right? So make sure that there's always a check mark here before you send out your campaign so that, when they get it, they're like, oh, how do I reach this Dan guy? I don't have, this kind of thing. Make sure you include your signature. At that point, you'll hit the save button to save any changes that you have made to this prefab first stage content, and it will save those changes into that first stage email for this templated sequence. Now, you would do the same thing with stage 2. You would want to go into the scheduled email and then open it up and edit it. And basically, again, take a look at the subject line, see if you want to modify that, see if there are any changes you want to make down below to make sure that this, sounds like you when they get it, kind of thing. And same sort of choices down below. You want to set the delay time wherever you think it makes sense. Now, in this sequence, it's set to go out 3 days later. Again, you can set that in minutes, days, weeks, or whatever sequence makes the most sense here. And the key concept with outreach campaigns always is this. If the recipient responds at any point, the campaign is over. The campaign shuts off immediately because we don't want to irritate them. We don't want to bug them. But if they did not respond to that first email, we want to look to you for guidance on when to send out the next stage, the second stage email. And the answer in this case, they set it at 3 days later. So adjust that to your liking. Again, you can send yourself a test email if you like. Make sure your signature is included at the bottom of this email and hit save to save the second stage of this prefab content. So you'll repeat this process of going through all of the stages in this templated campaign and basically use the 3-dot button to edit these stages to make sure they're personalized and that the messaging is powerful and effective. Right now, at that point, after you've sort of customized this, you're going to want to go to the settings button up here. There are 3 buttons at the upper left-hand corner of this kind of work page that you use when you're building a campaign: stages, prospects, and settings. After you've built out, or in this case, edited the stages, you're going to want to go to the settings button here. And this is where the name of the campaign is displayed. So right now we have kind of a generic name, Biz Dev Outreach. You might edit that to, Fall 2021 Outreach, Biz Dev Outreach campaign, something like that. And decide if you want to share this campaign with your team or not. If you put a check mark there, everybody will be able to see this campaign in Loxo and be able to drop people into this campaign to trigger it. Decide if you want it to adhere to your operating hours, your delivery hours that you've set on your settings page. Now, best practice, of course, and Jeff touched on this, is you might want to set your operating hours, as we call it in Loxo, your delivery hours for emails and text messages, something like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. kind of thing, so that nobody gets a stray text message at 5 in the morning or 11 o'clock at night, causing people to freak out because they think there's some family emergency, this kind of thing. This just makes sure that if on your settings page you've set the hours like 9 to 7, that this campaign will adhere to those hours. And then down below here, in terms of personalization, you want to indicate to us or give us a tip into if they have more than one email address or more than one cell phone number or phone number on their profile page in Loxo, which email and which cell phone are we targeting with this campaign, right? So most of our users do this. They uncheck everything except the personal email and the personal cell phone, so that all of the emails and text messages rather, that go out as part of this outreach sequence are going to be aimed at the personal email and personal cell phone. That's it in terms of adjusting your settings here. At that point, you'll hit save to adjust any changes that you've made here on this template. And notice at the upper right that there's a master on-off switch. As you build a campaign, or in this case, as you edit a prefab template campaign, the campaign's in pause, as you can see. But when you're done building it, you'll flip that to on to make it active, so it actually starts sending out communications to the folks. Now, at the prospects tab is where you can start dropping people into the campaign, right? So we know when you're building a campaign, you usually have like a list of 25 people you want to drop into the campaign. So at the prospects tab, you have an add prospect button to do just that. Now, it's an auto populate feature, so you start typing in the first name of the first person you want to drop in. Let's say Tom Tomshek. Use the add button to add him to this campaign. But notice next to each add button to the right here is this little clock symbol. This is where, as Jeff alluded to, you can actually do a schedule send and schedule the communication to go out like tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon or Monday morning, or you pick the date and time that this goes out. So you have a lot of control over when these go out. So let's say I'm looking at all these Toms that are in my database of people, and I'm like, oh yeah, Tom Morgan, he would be good for this one as well, and maybe Tom Barlow as well. So I click the add button next to these three Toms, and I hit done, and it's going to add these three into this campaign. Now, if it doesn't add them all at the same time, just refresh the screen. Sometimes it loads them in stages here. But basically, these three Toms have been added to this campaign, as you can see. Now, the number one question we get over at support typically with regard to outreach campaigns is, Dan, how do I remove someone from a campaign? I dropped this guy, Tom Barlow, into the campaign, but he's the wrong Tom Barlow. It's a different Tom Barlow. They just have the same name, this kind of thing. To remove someone from the campaign, you're going to use this more button over here on the right, this 3-dot button. And here's where you could remove this Tom if he was dropped in by mistake. Put the campaign on pause for this gentleman, skip the current stage, stage 1, and move him to stage 2, mark the campaign over and finish for this guy. Let's say you ran into him at the grocery store and he's like, oh yeah, Dan, I applied for that job. You're like, okay, I'll turn off that campaign, this kind of thing. And you could also move this gentleman into another outreach campaign. A lot of times our users want to have like back-to-back campaigns after this campaign, then they go into this campaign. So you can do that. You can move him into another campaign, or maybe he's more appropriate for another campaign that you put together. So you can immediately move him into another campaign if needed. Now, the great thing about these recipient management tools, as we call them, is that you can do this in bulk as well. So let's say my finger slipped and I dropped in all three of these Toms by mistake. I'm like, whoops. I can do select all to highlight all three of these Toms and take the same kinds of recipient management actions up top here using this 3-dot button. So here's where I can remove all three of these Toms, put the campaign on pause for all these dudes, resume the campaign, move them into the next stage, mark the campaign over and finished for these guys, add them into another campaign that they're more well suited for, or the backup campaign, let's say. Or here's another one, export a list of all the recipients of this campaign to a CSV list. We get that request incessantly over at support, so we've added that now as a feature that you can do yourself. So as you can see, as you start to drop people into your campaign, even if you drop hundreds of people into your campaign, it's going to be easy for you to quickly go to the prospects tab of that campaign, get a sense of who's receiving this campaign, what stage are they at, did they open the last communication, did they click on the link, and if you need to take any kind of actions like removing them, etc., you have that at your fingertips. Now, the last thing about campaigns I want to talk about quickly is the fact that when you close a campaign, it's going to take you back to the dashboard view where you're going to be able to see the campaign that you just created or edited in this case. So here's the campaign I was just working on. It was edited by me just a few moments ago. And in this dashboard view, you can sort of track your campaign very easily here. All the campaigns are stacked up. And to the right, you'll be able to immediately get your head around the open rate, the click rate, and the reply rate for each of your campaigns. So you can see which ones are really kicking butt and which ones are, kind of the duds that aren't working so well. To the right here, you can also see how many people you have sourced or dropped into this campaign that are receiving communications. You'll always have an on-off switch here. So if you need to, let's say you see a typo in the campaign 2 weeks later and you're like, whoops, I got this wrong. I need to fix this. You can put it on pause and then use the button here, this 3-dot button, to edit your campaign. Go back in there, fix that typo, fix that spelling mistake, fix that grammar faux pas, fix that bad messaging, this kind of thing. If you ever need to tweak the wording on any of the stages, you can always do that. And then when you're done editing, flip the switch, turn it back on, kind of thing. Also, under this 3-dot button, when you're managing your campaigns as a whole, you can delete the campaign altogether if you're never going to use it again, or it was just a bad idea from the get-go. Duplicate an old smash hit campaign and reuse it. So if you had like a great Christmas outreach campaign from last year and you want to reuse it and just change the date kind of thing, you can do that. You can also share your campaign or unshare it with your team if you have changed your mind since. So that's how basically you're going to put together a campaign using a template. It's exactly the same if you're building it from scratch. And frankly, what I always say in the 102 training is you can always build a campaign from scratch faster than it's going to take you to customize and personalize a templated content. But we know some people, they just get paralyzed with writer's block when they're trying to build a campaign. And that's why we have some good templates to start with here. But if you use the create new button under from scratch, it takes you right back to that same workbook page with the 3 steps of building a campaign: stages, prospects, and settings. Now, in this case, and I'm not going to spend much time here, but if you use the add stage button here to build your campaign yourself, it's going to give you a template that you're going to use to build out each stage in your campaign. Now, your campaign could be one of 5 options. It could be, each stage could be an email that goes out to the recipients telling them something or other about that job. It could be a text message that goes out to the recipients telling them something. It could be an outbound phone call that you make through Loxo to the recipient of the campaign at that particular stage in the sequence to talk to them about the job, let's say. It could be a LinkedIn action. Like what, Dan? Like sending them a connection request, or sending them an in-mail, or simply viewing and following them on LinkedIn. The other option is it could be a task that you add to the sequence of your campaign as part of the sequence that you either assign to yourself or someone else on your team. So maybe, if you have a 12-stage outreach campaign and at stage 6, you want to have a huddle up with your team to make sure the messaging is tight and effective, you might at stage 6 add a task that just says, hey, call a meeting with Maggie and the rest of the crew. We want to make sure that the messaging on this campaign is really working. And if we need to tweak it, we should do that, this kind of thing. Frequently, what I see is the last stage in a campaign sequence will be a task that says something like, okay, I give up. No response to the email at stage 1, no response to the text message at stage 2, no response to my outbound phone call at stage 3, no response to the LinkedIn action at stage 4, no response to my final attempt email at stage 5. Let's give this person to the intern. This kind of thing. Let's see if they can work their magic to reach out to this person by carrier pigeon or, something like that. So you get the idea. Any place in the sequence of your campaign that you would like to insert a task, you can do that at any stage. And what some ingenious users of Loxo have figured out is you can actually make campaigns that are all tasks. So it's essentially like a task reminder machine that you build just by building a campaign that is all tasks that don't have any, communication elements at all. Now, the last thing about building a campaign I want to emphasize is that it's up to you in terms of the strategy here, right? So a lot of our OG users who have been using Loxo for a long time, their campaigns invariably are all emails. Why? Because that's what they're used to. And it still works, at least to an extent, right? A lot of our brand new Gen Z users, the whippersnappers, are building campaigns that are all text messages. Why? Because they think emails are for squares. They're totally they're post email, as they say. So their campaigns are usually like 2 or 3 stages. They're very short and they're all text messages. But I think what we have found generally is that the most effective campaign sequences are usually an omni-channel blend of outreach attempts by email, by text message, by outbound phone call, by LinkedIn action or message, or by tasks that you assign to yourself to, sort of involve the candidate in this process. So mix it up is what I'm saying there. Now, there's no upper limit on the number of stages you add to your campaign. A lot of times with drip campaigns, there'll be like 30 or 40 stages involved. You can have super short little 1 and 2 and 3 stage campaigns. That is entirely up to you and your strategy that you are employing in this process. Now, the last thing I'm going to turn to before we wrap things up here with this webinar is the process of putting together a talent pool, which is, really a best practice when it comes to campaigns, is have a good list of candidates ready to go. So for that, I'm going to go to the People tab quickly. And under the triple hamburger button here, here's where you can access lists. And lists are basically folders with a bunch of candidates in them. But a fancy name for that would be a talent pool, right? So Ohio Accountant Superstars, that is a talent pool. It's also just a folder that you can drop candidates in, right? So the way this works is essentially you can use the Create List button to give a name to your list or folder, if you want to think of it that way. And then when you're searching and filtering your database, or when you're searching and filtering in Loxo Source for that matter, you can grab a group of candidates and drop them into that talent pool, that folder, that list in Loxo. So for example, let's say I'm building a list of CTOs in Denver in the aerospace industry, right? So I type in CTO in the search bar to get the ball rolling. That's going to shrink down this 30,000 candidate database here in this demo account to 570 CTOs. Now I can go to location and just type in Denver and hit enter, and it's going to shrink it down from 570 to something a little bit more manageable, probably 30. or 25, something like that. So we're going to get to a list of CTOs in Denver, 26. And now I can select all, and I can move these people immediately into a list, right? Let's say it's this one. So the idea here is that you create the list, the folder, the talent pool. And then when you're searching and filtering, you simply highlight people you want to drop into that list and use the add to list button so that they're in there. When you got a campaign sequence that you put together, you can immediately open up that list, highlight everybody, and drop them into that campaign at that point. So we make it super easy for you to create lists, talent pools that work hand in hand with an excellent outreach campaign sequence. All right, all that said, let's go back to the slide deck now, and we're almost done here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit here. So again, talent pools, a key factor. Now, 10 other outreach best practices. Many of these I sort of touched on in my little training portion there. First of all, you want to always personalize all the outreach communications whenever possible. Use a first name merge tag. Make sure that the messaging is personalized towards that target audience so it makes sense to them and it resonates with them, as they say. Be concise always in outreach campaign communications. Don't be too wordy. Try to be as short and concise as you possibly can. Also use a CTA, a call to action. When you're putting together communications as part of an outreach sequence, you want to get them to do something. You want them to either see a demo with your company and become a client of yours, or you want them to click the button in that email to apply for that job. So always be clear with your messaging about what exactly you want the recipient to do after they're done reading that communication. Next, always create automated campaign sequences if you can. The more you can automate this process by using Loxo, for example, the more it's going to free up time for you to work on other things to grow your business or other things you can do to engage candidates. Next, always keep in touch with folks, even if they're not interested in the job that you just pitched to them, right? You always want to have some kind of a drip campaign that goes out to passive candidates just to keep in touch with them, to say hi to them occasionally so that they remember you when they are ready to make a jump to their next opportunity. Next, you always want to build your network. You want to make people aware of the fact that you're always looking for excellent candidates in whatever particular industry that you are frequently working, so that when people come across a hot candidate in that industry, they think, oh yeah, Dan Hintz, my buddy, he's always looking for these kind of folks. So that the more you build your network and make people aware of the kind of candidates that you're frequently looking for, the more people are going to refer those kind of candidates to you. Next, be diligent with follow-up tasks. You know, as you create tasks in outreach sequences, you want to make sure that you always follow up with each of those tasks so that nobody slips through the cracks in this process. Next, configure automations for responses. Now, Loxo already does this, where if someone responds to the campaign is over. But same sort of thing, you know, if you're sending out bulk emails through Loxo or individual emails, you want to make sure that when they respond, you don't accidentally send them the same sort of, solicitation email or text message again by mistake. That will just irritate them and make them think that you're not paying attention to them. Next, always tailor your messaging to the job context. So again, you want to make sure that the messaging in the outreach sequence is tailored to the details of that particular job and isn't sort of a generic, software engineer job kind of thing. You want to focus on the particular software job, the software engineer job that you're working, and make sure the messaging matches that particular detailed context. And again, to reemphasize what I said earlier in the presentation, always follow the best practices that are outlined by the TCPA for text messaging. All right, now we're ready to take a few more questions. I know we've gotten some excellent questions that have come through the Q&A. So at this point, I want to just remind you that you can always email us at support directly if you have questions for us. It's support@loxo.co as you're putting outreach sequences together. And you can always chat with us live when you're logged in on your account using the question mark button at the lower left-hand corner on your navigation bar. If you are putting a sequence together and you want to get a best practice advice from us, feel free to reach out to us. And if you need my playlist of Loxo training videos, just email me directly at dan@loxo.co. So I think Maggie's on the line with me now. Maggie, are you there? And do we have some questions sitting in the queue that we can answer before we wrap things up here?
Yes, Dan, I am here, and it looks like we've got 3 open questions. Brianna Dodson. Looks like it's a list-specific question. Let's see. Say you're working on making a list today, then you add 25 people. Come Monday, you filter to not show the 25 people you already put in that list while searching for a new candidate to add. Looks like Mackenzie's actively typing to answer that question quick. And then Tom mentioned that Dan, you might have forgotten to mention the first, to first source candidates to a job so they show up in your job workflow. Any insights on that one when you add them to an outreach campaign?
Yeah, basically what you want to do always is drop candidates into the job in question, and then it shows up in the job workflow in the pipeline. And then, as Tom suggested, you can always add the candidates into an outreach campaign after that. So whatever sequence you do in terms of, when you add the people to the outreach campaign is entirely up to you. But Tom touches on a good best practice. A lot of folks will simply source the candidates into the job, highlight everyone in the sourced column, and then drop those folks into an outreach campaign as the next step in that sort of workflow. So that makes total sense. And Tom, thanks for clarifying that best practice. Let's see here. We have some other anonymous questions coming in from an anonymous attendee. If you build a campaign with a text stage that includes a bad number or people from the list with no number, does the campaign fail, or will the subsequent steps go through? The campaign will pause, and you'll be able to see that stage failed in the prospects tab on the campaign. So you will be able to, at that point, if you want to go into the person's profile page and modify the telephone number or change the email address, you'll be able to do that on the person's profile page. Okay, I know we have a couple of minutes here, so let's take a few more questions. Let's see, here's one coming in from Dejune. Once someone responds to a message from an outreach campaign, how do I set up an auto response, or do you recommend using templates or responding manually? You might want to build a template that has your response to the campaign already, and then simply copy and paste that in and fire that back to the person who has responded by email. And similarly in Loxo on the settings page, if you're an admin, you can also create text message templates. So if you've got some kind of an outreach campaign and you're expecting a lot of responses coming back in, and you want to be able to quickly fire off a text message to that person, you might want to build an SMS template as well on your settings page, in addition to email templates. Excellent question. Okay, looks like those are all the questions we have currently in the queue. If you guys have other questions, send them over. Just a reminder as well, you can email your questions after we hang up over to us at support. The email address support@loxo.co, as you can see on the screen. And we have a playlist of training videos as well. So if you're interested in watching more training videos related to building outreach campaigns, you certainly can. And for folks that have not sat through the 101, 102, and 103 basic trainings, the 102 training is the one where I cover outreach campaign sequences. It's the first topic in the 102 training. It's about 25 minutes in that training. So you guys might want to, if you have not sat through the 102 with me, either attend a live 102 webinar with me or watch the video and then pitch us questions as they occur to you. Here's one coming in, just some feedback saying, not a question, but I really wanted to thank you guys for this amazing webinar. Great content, and I learned a lot. Excellent. That makes me feel good. I know that makes Jeff feel good too.
Yes,
okay, good. Let's see. I think we have another one coming in here. If I add someone to a campaign and find that they're, oh, that's the one I already answered. I kind of missed how outreach integrates with hot lists. Can you explain that again? Okay, so the idea there is that under the lists tool in the people tab, under the triple hamburger button, you can easily create lists, basically folders that you can slot candidates into. So when you're searching and filtering your database of people in the people tab, you'll be able to highlight as many people from the results that you want by putting check marks to the right of their names. And then when you use the add list button at that point, which you'll see at the top of your people tab, you can immediately drop those people into those hot lists or those folders. And so you'll have those candidates essentially ready to go when you have an outreach campaign that you put together for, let's say, CTO aerospace candidates in Seattle. If you got a bunch of folks in that folder, you can highlight all the candidates in that folder and immediately use the 3-dot button in the people tab to drop them into the outreach campaign in question. So creating lists of candidates by sort of target audience, that is a talent pool by definition. So by building those talent pools using our lists tool, you got those folks ready to go. So whenever you build a campaign and you're like, okay, I need some good software engineers in Brooklyn, you have a software engineer Brooklyn superstar folder filled with candidates, you're able to put those people into the campaign and trigger it within seconds. So lists is part of automating your outreach campaigns. So when you have a job come across your desk, you have a bunch of candidates ready to go. You drop them in the outreach campaign, the ball is rolling within seconds. All right, here's another one coming in from Michael, and I know we're running out of time. We have like 1 minute left. So for folks that have to jump off the call, thank you very much for carving out an hour for this presentation. I really appreciate your time, and reach out to us if you have feedback or if you have questions going forward. We have one more question we'll take. Dan, did you say that we will receive the replay from today's presentation? That I can answer. Yes, yes, you will. So I've been recording this. When we finish this presentation, we'll put together a follow-up email that will go out shortly, either today or sometime soon. And in that follow-up email, we'll include a link to this video so you can watch it anytime you like. And again, just a reminder, reach out to me at dan@loxo.co if you need my full playlist of Loxo training videos, and we will add this as well into that playlist. All right, we're gonna have to leave it there. It is top of the hour now. Thanks again. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a fun Halloween, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye-bye for now.